What's going on, everybody? Season 2, Episode 1 of the Trophy Hunters podcast. A podcast dedicated to, I guess, this season, not just NASCAR, not just Kaulig racing, but a little NASCAR Fantasy GM League we're doing that you guys will get to follow along with. Joining me, as always, actually a fellow Fandom Empire member now as well. It's Ryan. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Sean, how you doing, man? It's been the winter has come and the winter has gone, and now it is time for another year of racing. So I am super excited to hop back into this and break down a lot of exciting, things that have happened over the off season, and yeah, the fandom stuff is a lot of fun too. So it's the empire is growing.
I don't know where you live, but I just looked out my window, and winter is most certainly not
Well,
and it's not coming. It's here.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is going to be a wonderful, crisp minus 30. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting hit by the same blast. We will also be a crisp minus 30 tomorrow as well into Saturday. So yeah, nothing like a little Arctic winter right as the spring flowers decide they're ready to pop up. So
man, I'm going to be on the road like for most of tomorrow too. I'm going to pick up my oldest guy, and so I'm going to be out in the middle of nowhere for some of it. It's just like, oh, please, car, don't break down. Don't do it. Don't do it on today of all days. I think I might bundle up just a little bit more.
yeah, we'll have the search parties on standby if we don't hear from you within a few hours.
Oh God, I wouldn't even want to know who's involved with that. They'd probably just leave me out there. Anyway, dude, we took an off season. I know it wasn't planned. We were going to do some during the season, and truthfully, it's not Ryan's fault. It's totally my fault. Life has been crazy, and if I'm being honest, it very much still is. But the fact that we got the Clash this weekend and the Daytona 500 next weekend, right?
Nope, 2 weeks. There's they take the week off for the Super Bowl. They'll be back in 2 weeks for the 500.
Well, good night, everybody. I was in a good mood. Take what you can get, then, I guess. Anyways, I'm excited that NASCAR is back. I just hope that one of the Kaulig guys can make it into the actual race this weekend. Because remember, that's not a given. I see a lot of people on Twitter thinking it's a given, and it's like, no, you got to do good enough in your heat in order to make it into that race.
Yeah, it's an interesting event because they have the last chance qualifiers too.
Haley made it in barely. Sorry, no, Haley made it in handedly. Allmendinger barely made it into the main feature.
Yes.
And then Allmendinger picked up a top 10 last year, and Haley got wrecked out by Kyle Larson. Yeah, he's doing quite well too.
Yeah. I will say this: the one thing that they did change the rules. They're taking more cars into the feature this year. I think they're taking 28. I think they said so. It's up from the 22 or 24 that they took last year. So it is easier to get in this year, but as you said, there are absolutely no guarantees. You got to race your way in. You got to earn that seat. So something to keep an eye on. Something little nerves going into the event.
Sorry, can you explain that to me? I'm not sure I'm following.
Yeah, so last year I think they took 24 cars into the main event, and this year they have upped the total number of entries for the main event. I want to say 28, maybe it's 30 even. So they're basically going to take an extra car from each heat race over what they did last year into the main event. So truth be told, if a Kaulig car does not make the main event, I would be extraordinarily disappointed because we're a top 30 team bar none. So that would be wicked disappointing.
So hang on, 30 cars are making it into the main event, or did I misunderstand that again?
No, that's pretty much right. It might not be 30, it might be 28, but I mean, when you really look at it competitively,
there's 28 cars making
good cars.
That race. Yeah, if it is 28, which I'm not sure it is, but if it is, I would be horrifically disappointed if you can't find a way to be one of two of 28 cars, not just one. You better
Yeah,
have both of those cars in there. But then
yeah.
it's like, what's the value of the heats? Like, how many guys aren't going to make it?
Well, I mean, you don't really want BJ McLeod floating around out there, do you? I mean, I guess if you're
No,
on a rolling
but
chicane, you put a BJ McLeod in
if
there.
there's
But
28 cars, there's still what 9 or 10 normal guys out there, and I can think of definitely five or six of them that are for the better part useless.
yeah,
um,
well, I know 36 cars are making the trek, so I think you're looking at 36 cars racing for 28 spots. So most everyone's going to make the A main.
Interesting. Oh, so no, 8 cars will go home. Yeah, you better not be one of those 8 cars, or
Yeah,
you're
unless
you're
you're on the wrecker. If you come back on the wrecker, I guess that's one thing. But
if you're one of those 8 cars, you are starting the season off on the wrong note, even for a non-points race, in my opinion. Unless you get wrecked out, obviously, some things cannot be helped. Interesting.
yeah,
I'm excited. A lot happened at the end of last year. We're finally getting ready for the new season. Maybe before we dive into what's coming, we should catch some of the audience members up on just what the hell has happened since we last
Ooh.
left. Ryan, what was in your opinion, anyways, what was the biggest change for Kaulig going into this season? And we absolutely do have to address the Landon Castle 10 car situation as well in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I truthfully, I would say that is the biggest elephant in the room. Unfortunately, I know we kind of talked about it at the tail end of last year with the struggles the Voyager was having financially, and I know they filed for bankruptcy. We lost a full time driver over the off season, which I don't think was planned. Landon Castle, unfortunately, is out of a ride at Kaulig Racing due to the lack of funding from Voyager. So now the 10 car is going to be an all-star car, it looks like, for the vast majority of the 2023 Xfinity racing season. So I really think that was the biggest, oh, wow, that wasn't really expected moment of the year. But in exchange of that means I think there's some opportunities now to get some bigger names into that seat, whether that's, obviously Justin Haley, AJ Allmendinger, but also perhaps some of the other Cup regulars. We could see a Ross Chastain or maybe even a Kyle Busch come in and run some races now that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise expected to. So I think that's something to be looking out for going into the 2023 season on the Xfinity side.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's the biggest story, but we'll start there. When the Voyager thing happened last year, we talked about it on this show. We didn't know necessarily what it meant and how everything was going to pan out. And yet it panned out, in my opinion, probably worse than either one of us thought for poor Landon Castle. And again, I'm not a Landon hater. I don't think he's the greatest race car driver in the world. I think he has his strengths. But at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of discourse out there online. I've seen you involved in some of it, actually, dude, where people didn't understand why Landon wouldn't get the same type of support that AJ got from Matt Kaulig. And with all due respect to Landon Castle and Landon's fans, who, like, I'll be honest, he has more of a backing than I thought he did on social media. They're not the same quality of driver. Landon's a good race car driver, no doubt. That's why he's there. That's why their sponsors are willing to back him. But he doesn't have something that he is either near the best or the best at.
Right.
He's just sort of okay at a lot of things and then not good at a couple other things, road course racing being one of them. Where AJ, yeah, they knew, even when AJ was running part-time for them, it's like, oh, hey, when we go to the road course races, if he doesn't win, we're at least one of the favorites. and that gives you reason to self-sponsor him and put your company name out there and take from your company's marketing budget. And Landon doesn't do any of that, and that's unfortunate because I think even when rumblings of this came out, a lot of us still thought, okay, well, Landon will be in the car, 15, 20 times, and they'll fill out the other, 13 to 15 races with someone else. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
No.
It looks like Landon's barely going to be in that car at all.
Yeah, and that was really one of the first comments I made to you when this news dropped. Was like, I kind of expected him. Okay, I mean, obviously Voyager was off the table, but between self-funding from Kaulig or maybe a handful of sponsorship opportunities elsewhere, I thought he'd be in the car for at least 10 races. And based off of kind of just what's happened since then, if he's in the car even at all once or twice, I'd be pretty surprised. So that's really unfortunate for Landon and Landon's fans. And remember, I mean, I want to give a shout out to the Landon fans because he was kind of America's driver there for several years. I mean, he's always been that scrappy underdog that's performed above his weight in those really low tier cars, whether it was Xfinity or Cup. Starcom, racing, rest in peace, that organization comes to mind. Where he really made something out of nothing, and he really became popular for that, and he clearly does have a strong fan base. So it's disappointing that couldn't continue. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, as good as he was, and he is a good race car driver. In fact, I mean, one of the episodes last season, I broke it down. He had a better season than Daniel Hemrick, and it particularly wasn't close. But he never excelled outside of his really good run at New Hampshire there. He had a race-winning car. I think he finished third, but then got disqualified. So that was a whole other can of worms. But at the end of the day, if you're going to fund somebody out of your pocket, you really need them to bring something to the table. And in AJ's case, he was obviously notorious for his road course racing. But on top of that, it was evident that he made other packages really better as well. I mean, even including the 1.5 miles. So when the talent disparity, unfortunately, was probably the main reason Landon is out of a ride, but it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve a ride elsewhere. And I really do hope he can land on his feet.
Yeah, I mean, I want the best for Landon, and I do think he's going to get in that car. Believe it or not, I think he's going to get some races in it. I just don't know how many it's going to be. I think the one thing that he can probably sell a sponsor on is, hey, we got disqualified, but did you see that run in New Hampshire? He's also proven that he's willing to be the sacrificial lamb at super speedways. So if you don't have someone else that's willing to bring in big super speedway money and you want one of your other guys to win, you might self-sponsor him for that race, or he might be able to bring on a sponsor for that race. And sponsors typically like the super speedways because even if they get wrecked, they're usually getting some sort of TV time on there. So,
Yeah.
I think he's going to have a chance to get some races, but man, at this point, I would be shocked if he gets half a dozen.
I agree. As I said, I think he might get one or two. With Kaulig, agreed. At the end of the day, I do think he probably races a decent amount this year, just not with Kaulig.
Yeah, and again, it's too bad because I don't think anybody wanted it to turn out that way. I know I didn't want it to turn out that way. That said, and again, I don't want to piss off too many Landon Castle fans, but with that said, boy, dude, does it change my excitement level for that 10 car this year in Xfinity and to watch it. Like, I was already excited to watch Chandler Smith run a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
All due respect to Daniel Hemrick. I was very underwhelmed with his performance last year. I'm hoping that he's better this year, but I got to be honest, man. I'm doing the math in my head, and we know Matt Kaulig had something to do with Athletic Greens, as you said, or at least they have something to do with Kaulig companies. But they left; they didn't come back. That was basically hinted at with a few races to go last year. That they probably would be back on the car. Circle comes back 14 races, so that's pretty key to him. But they're also going to sponsor some Justin Haley races too in the Cup Series. So that I think that's huge. That's key. But I got to be honest. I think Daniel Hemrick is going to be in most races the third focused on car in that racing stable. I know people might be like, "What?" But like, he's a veteran, so they're going to expect him to do less with more. There's going to be extra special attention paid to Chandler Smith. That's a long-term investment. And think about the drivers that might be in that third car if you're going trophy hunting. Justin Haley, AJ Allmendinger, Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, Trevor Bayne. Like, I think that 10 car is gonna have more attention paid to it than people think.
Yeah.
And
well, I think if you look at what Joe Gibbs Racing's done in years past, their all-star car usually is the best running car of the bunch, and sure, a lot of that has to do with the driver talent, but they're sinking money into that car because they want it to perform well. And I definitely think the 10 car was the original Kaulig car. I mean, they're even though the 16 became the car Kaulig, mostly thanks to AJ's talents, the 10 car is still, I think, near and dear to Kaulig, Matt specifically, and they're going to make sure that car runs well, and it's going to show up at every track, and they're probably going to be expected to perform, whoever's behind the wheel. So I don't really disagree with you on that. But I will say, I mean, one thing what Hemrick does, he's consistent. He can take chicken and make chicken salad out of just about anything, and he'll bring home top 10s most weeks. And at the end of the day, if he can perform at a higher level than that consistently, awesome. But really, I think for our expectation levels, I mean, just solid top 10s is where he's going to be at, and we'll see what the rookie can bring and what that all-star car can bring.
I expect both Kaulig cars to make the Xfinity chase. I absolutely do. And I know some people might be like, well, that's kind of high expectations for Chandler, but it's like, no, look at the equipment that he's going to be in. And again, I'm going to make some educated speculation here, some informed speculation, if you will. But the strength of the Xfinity field is down this year. Ty Gibbs, out. AJ Allmendinger, out. Noah Gragson, out. And before anybody says Cole Custer, please, I'm sorry, but all three of those guys have far more talent than Cole Custer. And I get it. He's a previous Xfinity, might have been nationwide then, champion. But, I look at Chandler Smith, how well he did in trucks. I think he ran for the championship the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, championship for last year. So,
I expect that car to be in the chase. Like, I expect it to be a learning curve. I'm not saying he's going to make it swimmingly, but I think that'll be in the chase. And I do think Hemrick is consistent enough to be in the chase. So you're going to have attention paid to that 10 car to go win races. And I think you're going to have a chance to put people in that car that could win the races. Like AJ, I'm going to sort of segue here a little bit, but we found this out this week, man. AJ Allmendinger, Nutrient Ag Solutions, Cup Series, primary sponsor.
Huge deal. I mean, without a question, huge deal. And just in general, seeing the Kaulig sponsors from last year, not only coming back this year, but actually stepping up their involvement and their financial support means a lot to the entire organization. And Nutrien, this time last year was on the outs. They weren't even associated with Kaulig a couple weeks before the season started, and they were able to get pulled back in through some magic, some grease some wheels and rub some palms, and they came back. I think they're on the car 10 races last year with AJ during the Xfinity Series, and as if you've mentioned multiple times, they did show up for those big races, those road course races where he was expected to win. They put their money where their mouth was there. And then to see them, step up to the Cup level with AJ, that is no small thing. I mean, the monetary difference between Xfinity and Cup is substantial. And considering they were only on the car a third of the season last year, they clearly increased their funding for this organization at a tenfold rate. And while we don't know how many primary sponsors they're going to have, it definitely seems like they are going to be the primary sponsor on the car, based off what we saw posted just in the last couple of days between the very high quality video edit that they provided to announce this partnership. And then we, later found out that the NASCAR hauler, which, at the end of the day is a grain of salt thing, but it is Nutrien AG, side to side, top to bottom, green as can be. They have the full hauler on the side of the car. and all the other partners, including Action Industries, are only a very small footnote on the side of the hauler. So I really do think we're going to see Nutrien at a minimum half the season, if not more, based off of what we've kind of inferred from this information. So that is an excellent news for and for Kaulig in general.
I don't know if we'll get them for half a season, just because I've seen some hauler deals where you get the hauler and you might have done a 12 race package for them, but they might have been some of the more expensive races, and you still get the hauler because you sponsor more races than anyone else does. But I imagine it's significant, simply because if it wasn't, you can bet your ass Matt Kaulig would have stapled Kaulig companies over that car or that hauler again for sure. I'm just trying to pull up an image of it quickly. Of course, we're out of space. Haven't been doing much, and we're still out of space. Twice apparently.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, while you're looking that up, is I did do a little bit of a deep dive the other day, looking through all the different sponsors in years past, and there is a reason last couple years, even with AJ running full time, that the pit crew always had a Kaulig Company's fire suit, or they had the Kaulig Company's trailer, because a lot of the sponsors, including Action Industries, is associated with the Kaulig companies, and Kaulig Capital Investments have put money into these businesses. Action Industries, as I said, I found out they were associated with Hyperice. They were associated with the AG Green company. So, Kaulig in various manners has kind of self-sponsored a lot of the races for AJ, even with naming on the side of it. So this picture tells a real story for me that Nutrien has really stepped up to the plate, and that they are investing big in AJ and in the organization.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, because at the end of the day, Nutrien might be sitting there looking at Chandler Smith going, okay, well, 3 or 4 years from now, that might be our guy that we're tying our wagon to if he's going to be the next big thing for this organization. And, and who knows, you hate when what I would have liked to seen is a multi-year agreement, but I know AJ's deal is like a rollover deal. But what I hate is you get a sponsor like Nutrien comes into the sport to get some success with the driver, and then Hendrick Motorsports comes over and says, "Hey, Nutrien, we need 6 races here. Come do our 6 races instead of their 18 or Hendrick." And they end up really picking a sponsor. It's happened for decades in this sport, and so I would like to think they're tied to Kaulig. It's also important. We're not to mention that we're not like degrading Kaulig racing when we say, "Hey, you're self-sponsoring cars," because it's not like they're not getting anything back from it. This is marketing money that is already in place for a lot of these companies. And when Ryan says they're associated, that doesn't mean that Matt Kaulig is the sole owner of all these companies. Kaulig Companies is a widespread organization that has a bunch of other sub companies in it, as Ryan's already mentioned. So it's not like they don't get anything from it, but it's certainly more beneficial if they can go get someone from outside of Kaulig Companies to put it in millions among millions of dollars. And make no mistake, to get that hauler and several of the races, it's several $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, I would venture at a bare minimum they invested $10 million, if not more, because as we know, a full season sponsorship package for the Cup cars, and admittedly, very few companies do this, so it's not common. But I mean, you're talking 25 million plus to sponsor a car for an entire year. So it's clear to me that they stepped up in a huge way. And just to finish off what you said a second ago, we've seen now with Hendrick cars on the side of Kyle Larson, while that is a Rick Hendrick owned organization, that is a self-managed organization. They've got their own leadership, they've got their own marketing budget, and they chose to sponsor that car outside of what Rick Hendrick does with his NASCAR team. And it was clear to me Matt Kaulig has done the exact same thing with these companies, whether it's Spin Action Industries or even Leaf Filter or Hyper Ice or AG Green. It's clear that they are putting their marketing budgets into this and they're getting returns on it. So it's always good to have money. It doesn't really matter where it's coming from as long as it's getting, into the right place, and it's not some Ponzi scheme. I'm going to kind of throw Focus Factor under the bus here a little bit with what happened over at RPM Racing last year. They were kind of a fake company, very small, and they reneged on their payment, and they're off the car this year because they didn't pay their bills. So
Hang
in
on,
no
hang
way
on.
has
Focus Factor's off the car.
Yeah. Yep, they're gone. It's gonna that 43 car is gonna be sponsored by Allegiant pretty much the entire season, which is Maury Gallagher's airline. He owns it. Focus Factor is gone. They didn't pay their bills. Off they go. So,
What's funny about that, everybody looked at that last year when they signed that big friggin' almost 30 race multi-year deal, might I add, not a 1-year deal. I think it was like 26 races a season or something like that. And I remember people going to their social media account, almost no following. And it's just like, wait, how the hell did you afford to go on that car as often as you did and your company's non-existent?
Well, this is clear to me that something amiss was done for the financials, and now they're gone, and I'm not surprised they're gone, as most people so widely predicted last year when they found out, like, who the hell are these guys? Well, they're nobody. They're clearly some level of small time fake. I don't really know the details, so I'm not going to go much beyond that, but it didn't work, and anything that's happened at Kaulig has worked. So I guess that's the differentiation I was trying to make. That it doesn't matter who sponsors the car on this Kaulig racing organization. It's on the legit. They're paying the bills, and we're going racing, and we're going to be competitive with it. I just think it's impressive when we have Nutrien, and then just while we're talking about it, we've seen just in the last couple of days, Circle has invested level now with Justin Haley. We don't know how many races they're going to be there, but probably a handful. And we're seeing Celsius step up as well in a bigger way this year. So all of the primary sponsorship that's been a part of the Kaulig racing stable is increasing their funding, whether it's on the 16 car or the 31 car. And at the end of the day, that should really help the organization take the next steps forward into trying to be a championship contenders.
No, absolutely. And Celsius stepped up, as you said. They're going to be the primary sponsor on both the 16 and the 31 on the Cup side for multiple races this year. No word on how many, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2 or 3. Which is still that's fantastic. That's great. And they're going to be a associate sponsor on all the Xfinity cars. So that's awesome. That's great that they're stepping up in that regard. Just one last thing on the Nutrien Egg thing. I talked to a buddy of mine that works for another NASCAR team. You and I talked about him the other day privately a little bit. And I just asked him if he knew anything on the Nutrien Egg side of things, or if he'd heard anything. And he hadn't, but his speculation was this: if they got the hauler, and if they're doing the similar deal that they did with their Xfinity races last year, where, don't forget that Nutrien Egg was on the car for Allmendinger in every single Xfinity road course. Every single one was Nutrien Egg. And they were on the car for all of them. And the belief was that Kaulig got a substantial amount of money for those races by selling them as premium races. But the back end of it was Nutrien got discounted ovals on there as well. And I think they got like, 7 road courses last year in Xfinity?
Yeah, I think Xfinity had 7.
I think they had 11 races last year, so they got 3 or 4 ovals on top of that. But he wouldn't be surprised if the deal was similar. That if Nutrien might be doing AJ's 5 Xfinity road courses, he'd be shocked if they weren't doing it. And he suspects that on the Cup side, it's somewhere between 12 and 18 races, if not more. And in terms of money, the amount that he thought it was closer to 20. So again, it could be nothing. This is just speculation from someone who is inside the industry. but doesn't mean he knows any more than anybody listening to this episode in terms of finances. That's just the way it goes. But we'll have to see how much it's on the car. But I would love to see a big investment. But most importantly, I would like to see the investment pay off for both sides, sponsor, driver, and team.
Well, I think that's the big question mark going into the year. I mean, we know the strength of the Xfinity field, and while it's very top heavy, it's not as near as strong as anything in the Cup level. So, what does that translate to in terms of results? And we talked about this a little bit right before we went on the air. What's a realistic expectation for Kaulig at the Cup level this year? And I personally think getting one win would be a good thing. And can they, kind of back up what we saw the last 15 or so races of the season last year, where they're just, consistently running top 10, top 15 week in, week out, on a road course or maybe at one of the better ovals for either driver, they can sneak out a win. I think those are the expectations. Same token, last year, we're not going to see AJ win 5 races. We're just not. It's an unrealistic thing. So hopefully Nutrien feels like they're still getting the value there, even though they're not going to be as prominent at the front and probably won't be on the TV as much. So we'll see how that plays out. But certainly something to keep an eye on.
Well, they'll be on TV just as much on the road courses because he's going to be up there in those races. So
that's very true.
Because he won't be one. They got rid of the stage breaks. And we'll talk about that when we talk. We'll talk more about that when we talk with Mike and Cody on a crossover. But just specifically, they're running for points too. So the strategy would have had to change a little bit anyway. So they'll be up front and they'll get plenty of TV time on those tracks. There's six this year in Cup. Is that right? 6 or 7?
I think it's one less than Xfinity. So I'm not sure. I think it's 6 Cup, 7 Xfinity.
Okay. So what it makes, I think you're right. I think it's 6 and 7, and you can bet your ass that Allmendinger's going to do 5 road courses on Xfinity, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nutrien Ag literally just had those races thrown to them because, as Ryan alluded to earlier, it is significantly more money to sponsor a Cup car than a Xfinity car. Like we're talking for in some places 3-4 times as much.
Yeah, you could sponsor all 32 races in the Xfinity series for $10 million. And as I just said, $10 million at the Cup level will get you probably less than half. So just the sheer difference there. And if your guy says upwards of $20 million, then even better for one thing. And then that just kind of really, solidifies my thought process of where they're going to be in terms of commitment of close to half the races. So definitely exciting times on that front. And it's really exciting to see the organization take those next steps.
Let's go through some predictions here, man. Let's start with Cup. Haley and Allmendinger, how do they do? Where's your expectations for them?
I think AJ makes the playoffs. I think AJ will win 1 race. He'll make the playoffs, and I think he makes a good run. I think he'll make the round of 8. That is a big, big prediction. It's obviously something we've never seen him. He's only made the playoffs once, didn't get out of the round of 16. I think he's capable of round of 8. He's in the prime of his career. This is his best chance this year to make that happen, and I think he will. Justin Haley, I think he misses the playoffs. Not by much, but I do think he misses the playoffs. I kind of want to slot him into the right around 18th in points, maybe 19th in points. Definitely inside the top 20. Better than he was last year, but he's still learning the ropes. He's still a young guy. I think he's going to have some ups and downs and some inconsistencies that keep him out of the playoffs.
I have Allmendinger making the playoffs. I don't have any round prediction. It could be round of 16 again. I just have him in the playoffs. I do not have him winning a race. I think his best shot is Chicago, since nobody will have any practice there and relying on talent. And you go to a brand new track that's never been set up before. You are relying on talent. There's no history there. And I think I firmly believe AJ Allmendinger is the best road course racer in NASCAR. And that includes Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, all those other guys. But obviously, specifically, actually, not Tyler Reddick, really Tyler Reddick. and Chase Elliott both have substantially better equipment.
Well,
Well, I shouldn't say that, but they're on the bigger profile teams. Obviously, the equipment thing's a little different, but they have better engines. So there's no
yes,
debating that.
no argument there. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's a street course. Outside of AJ, not a single other NASCAR driver has run a street course, and it is a totally different animal, even than from a road course. It's going to be much more narrow. It's going to be a lot easier. I mean, we've seen how road courses can be just parking lots with the carnage, and we're going to see that times 10 at a street course, and only one guy has any history there, and that should give AJ a huge step up. So yeah,
I think Allmendinger's going to dominate that race. I just think it's going to be a caution fest, regardless of there not being stage restarts, and something's going to happen. So I have him not winning a race this year. I have him contending a bunch. I have him hopefully being the same way they were last year, consistent. Focus on being consistent and capitalize on pointing out every single chance you get, because there is, in my opinion, there's almost no chance there's going to be 16 different winners going into the playoffs. I would say it's far more likely to be somewhere between 10 and 13 than all the way up to 16. And I think he makes it on points. And I too think Haley will just miss it somewhere in that 17 to 20 range. So I'm right there with you. And I don't think it's a bad thing if they don't win a race. I think as long as they're running good and they're excelling and improving in areas they need to improve. One, horsepower. The RCR cars gotta get a little more oomph to their engines and chassis development as well. They need to improve in those areas. Pit crew. You and I talked this morning about that.
Yep.
They made a move. They brought in I can't remember the fellow's name, but a guy from the 43 team who a lot of people hold up very high, and is apparently a big time pit crew leader and was there for a long time and has been doing it for almost 20 years. And they brought him in to lead the pit crew now. So like they identified areas of weakness and are at least trying to improve on them. And that's how organizations get better.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, if they don't win a race this season, I won't consider it a failure. I won't. I agree with you. It is super hard, even with 16 winners last year. It is just stupid hard to win races at the cup level. And if they don't, it's all right. But I do expect some more consistency, especially 16 week in and week out. I would really like to see him set a personal best for top 10s this year. And I don't know what that number is exactly. It's probably right around 10 or 12. But I'd like to see him match and or beat that number, because that to me is how he's going to make the playoffs. Just consistent 10th, knock out maybe a half dozen top fives, and he'll have a good year. And for Justin, I think expectations for him should be 2 or 3 top fives and 5 to 10 top 10s. And if he can do that, I think that's a really good year for him as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. And again, I do think AJ does get a win. He's too talented. There are too many opportunities for him for him not to get a win.
How about Chandler Smith in the Cup Series?
In the Cup Series, top 20s. I think that's really kind of, he should be fine at Daytona. I mean, if he can keep the fenders on the car, he can win the damn thing. That's the thing about Daytona. He's
got to make the race first.
That's true. You know what? That's true. There's 4 or 5.
On that one, you could wreck lap in one of those duels, and
you bring up a good point there. He might not make that race, but I do think he will. The Kaulig car and the legacy car for Jimmy Johnson should be the 2 best open cars there. And especially if he's lucky enough to get into a duel with his teammates, or at least a teammate, they're going to do everything they can to push him to a point where we're
going to miss at this point.
I think there's going to be 4 or 5 cars that miss the field.
So we're looking at 40 is the max that can make it, and
40 can make the race, and I think they have 44 or 45 entered. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited for the duels. It's going to be a little bit of a change of pace where there's actually potential for good cars to go home this year. So that's definitely exciting. But outside of that, he's going to run 4 other races that aren't super speedway. Really, I don't have much expectation for him, honestly. Top 20, top 25. Nothing wrong with that.
Courses, are they?
Yeah. No. A couple short tracks and 2 super speeders. I do think he's doing Talladega as well. So
because it seemed like it didn't seem like he lit the world on fire, but it seemed like he was really solid on road courses and truck.
Well, I mean, I think it's easing them into it. I mean, the short tracks and super speedways are probably the easiest.
Easing them into it. If they were easing them into it, he wouldn't be doing a damn cup race this year.
Well, they obviously have a lot of high expectations for Chandler, as do I. Truthfully, I know we haven't really talked about him. Maybe we can chat about him next for a few
Yeah,
minutes here. But um, yeah, I think from a cup level, listen, it's his. He's going from, and we saw Todd Gilliland. He didn't light the world on fire, but he was really solid for Front Row Motorsports last year. That's kind of what I would like to see from Chandler. Just solid, finish the races. Top 25 is excellent for him on that front. But for the Xfinity side, I actually legitimately have high expectations for him. I know it doesn't mean jack diddly, but they just had the open practice the other day at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and Chandler Smith was P2 on the practice chart. And he brought Kaulig was fast. Both he was P2, Hemrick was P3. Coming into the season, that's nothing to sneeze at. So I really think Chandler, and obviously that 16 car is a proven winner. He's that crew chief and driver pairing should work really well. He should make the playoffs. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I'd be woefully disappointed. And I really do think Chandler can get a win. I really do. I don't know where, I don't know when, but the car is capable. I think the driver's got the talent. They just got to put it together. And I do think that 16 car in the Xfinity side is going to be bad fast again this year.
Well, it sure as hell wasn't bad fast last year. They had a bad fast driver who saved their bacon race in race out. None of those cars, with the exception of a couple races, had much speed under the hood. So, how many cars were at Charlotte?
It was an organizational test, so I'm assuming most everyone was there.
Gotcha. Okay, and P2, P3, that's pretty good.
Yep.
That's pretty good. On the Cup side, hey, Chandler Smith is trying to get into Daytona 500 for two reasons. A sponsor paid big money to get him in that car for that race, and two, to push AJ Allmendinger or Justin Haley to the win because you get to make the chase. Everything else is out. That is why he's starting that race. In fact, I will go one step further, and I won't guarantee, but I'll say there's a damn good chance that there's someone else in that 13 car, maybe even Chandler again, for the other Daytona race and the other Talladega race if Chandler already has the other one, because they're going to want as many many bullets in the chamber as they can on those super speedways for a chance to win. And if you have more cars to work with, the stronger that you are. In fact, I'll go one step further and say I wouldn't be shocked if you see a 61 car randomly appear on the track and them have 4 cars at a super speedway race later this year if there's sponsorship to allow it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Daniel Hemrick ran all 4 of the super speedways last year. No reason not to expect that we're going to see the 3rd car there this year as well, even though it's only been announced for the 2 so far with Chandler Smith. So you bring a good point there.
I would hope they would invert the number 2. I know it's such an unimportant thing, but you inverted the 31 into 13, which is my favorite number, so that works for me to a point. I have it tattooed on me. But invert the 16 to 61. No one else is using it, and literally, if you ever got to a point where you could sustain 4 solid running Cup cars in Cup, you have 13, 16, 31, 61. I think that looks good in terms of team numbers.
Yeah, I'm just thinking here. I'm doing a quick search while I have a second, but that Beard Motorsports car with Austin Hill, is that not 61? I think it might be 61.
Is it 61? I thought they were 62.
Maybe they're 62. Let's see. 62. Yep, you're right. 62. So 61 is available.
Yeah, I would hope they'd invert them. But yeah, I suspect that they're going to give AJ and Justin as much support as they can on the super speedways, as long as it's not, draining their bank account to do so. And you know what? If Chandler Smith performs well in the Cup car, I'm not suggesting he will, especially when they get to the non-super speedway tracks. I think he only has 3 of them. So, if he can be flirting with a top 25, he's way out of his league in terms of experience.
Well,
just be happy with what you get.
Well, remember, he's also he's running North Wilkesboro, which is the All-Star race this year too. So, which I do find extraordinarily interesting that they've chosen to put him into that race as one of his 5.
5 races?
That's one of his 5. Yeah. So he's going to have to go to the Open and race his way in if he wants to race in the big show for that.
Interesting. And in terms of Xfinity, I think he's going to win a race this year. Might even win more. But at the end of the day, it totally depends on the strength of the Xfinity cars. I have no doubt that Kaulig's focus this offseason was to improve the Cup program as much as they possibly could, as it should be. That's where the money is. But they knew they had some work to do on the Xfinity side with whatever went wrong last year. And I suspect that they will be stronger. I expect both him and Hemrick to make the chase. So, yeah, I think Chandler Smith wins an Xfinity. Hemrick fans are going to hate me for saying this. I don't think Hemrick wins a race this year. I do think he makes the chase. I do think he probably performs a little better than he did last year. And
Well,
I do think Landon Castle is going to drive. I just don't think he's going to drive much.
yeah. Well, and again, I think Hemrick fans are kind of used to this at this point. I mean, he's extraordinarily consistent. That's been his MO his entire life. He has one win. Hey, it was a big win. It was the most important win of his life. But I don't think saying Daniel Hemrick may not win a race is that shocking. It's just kind of how he drives the car, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think Chandler Smith, he's going to bring a bucket of talent. He's coming from Kyle Busch Motorsports. They're exceptional at grooming talent. We're putting him into our flagship car, full-time flagship car anyway, in my opinion. And you're right. It's at the end of the day, it's all about the equipment. You can have the best driver on the planet and not win a damn race if the car isn't good enough. But with that said, the Xfinity Series is, I do believe, going to be a bit down this year. Not as the JR Motorsports cars are going to be fast like they always are. And the JGR's got a couple fast young guys running, but really, I really think there's a lot of opportunities to run up front. Whereas in years past, the top 5 was kind of locked out with the same 5 drivers week in and week out. So I really think, Chandler should be consistently running top 10 later. And I do think you have to give him some time too. I'm not expecting him to come out. Daytona is its own beast, but once they get out of Daytona, they go to Fontana after that, right? What happens at Fontana and then the next 10 races, I think you have to give Chandler some time to adjust to the car. He is going Xfinity racing for the first time. If the results aren't there right away, I think that's all right. You got to give him a little bit of time to get it antiquated. But as the season progresses, I just think he's going to get better and better and faster and get to a competing regularly towards the front of the field. And I do think he did run one race last year. I think it was for Sam Hunt Motorsports, and he brought a home top 10. So I think there's definitely some opportunities there, and I expect him to run really well.
I'm just looking at the paint schemes for the Clash here. And again, on a Kaulig front, this isn't super important, but I like paint schemes, sponsors, and they drive the sport and all that. And I could be wrong. I think AJ Allmendinger's Action Industry paint scheme is different. I just don't think it's drastically different. I think it's very small and subtle. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Specifically on the hood, I don't remember the hood area coming down the way it does now. The purple on the hood.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you're right. I do think that looks a little bit different.
And I also think just like the blue filling on the bottom on the sides of the car is higher up. It seems a little less white.
I agree. I think the blue was a little bit thinner. I would need to look back and compare the two. I don't have an old picture in front of me, but I do agree with you. That looks slightly different. Although, one thing about Action Industries, they have a very prominent design and they've held true to it. So as much as we like brand spanking new paints and new looks for the year, it's a sharp looking ride, and I'm excited to see it on the track. But I will say this: I am a little annoyed with Celsius, and not. I love the fact they're sponsoring the car, but that paint scheme is exactly the same as it was last year. That hasn't changed one bit, and we know for sure that company is going to be on Corey LaJoie's car for 1 or 2 races, and they also are going to have that same paint scheme on their car. So it's a little. I wish they would, at a very minimum, maybe mix in some of their other flavors to give the colors a little bit more unique design.
Nope. It's completely in my head. The paint scheme's the same. Apparently that purple was there on the hood last year, just never really registered. You know what it wasn't on though is it's barely on the Xfinity. It's much less noticeable on his Xfinity Action Industries paint scheme. That's where I'm getting it from. Where on the Cup side it was.
Yeah. Well, they're very different cars, so not surprised.
Yeah, Celsius is the same, and I'm not saying you need to do a new paint scheme every year. But I'm not a big fan of the Celsius paint scheme personally, but that's just me. Kudos for them though for them and Action Industries putting their money where their mouth is and putting it on there. And I do notice that Nutrient Ag is on the side of the car now. And you know what? AG is still on the side of Allmendinger's car.
Yep, as is Hyper Ice.
Maybe they just didn't agree to come back for Landon, or not Landon, Daniel.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Daniel still has close to 20 races to fill in, right? I mean, I'm glad that Circle's there for 14, but that means we've got what's the number, 18 or 19 more that they need to fill in. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we see AG back on his car. Just, it hasn't been as prominently mentioned this year. So, again, that company does fall under the Kaulig companies, and if there are races that aren't, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it just gets slapped on there. So. But it's as I said, I mean, the one thing about the Xfinity side in particular is, they're very good about having local sponsors too. So I think we're going to see a lot of, maybe not a lot, but I definitely think we're going to see probably half a dozen sponsors come on board for any of the Xfinity cars that haven't been mentioned at this point in the year, or even during the season, that they just kind of get introduced the week of. So that's also something I expect to see.
Did we ever find out how many races Charge Me is doing for Chandler and Kaulig?
I do not know that number, unfortunately, no.
Because it's not like they were on Chandler's truck, 20 times or anything. They were always like a half season, a little less than half season sponsor, and it costs more money to sponsor an Xfinity car than it does a truck. So I do wonder how much sponsorship he was able to bring to this, or if Charge Me ends up giving him a bigger backing because he's going to Kaulig. Kaulig has success in Xfinity, more TV time, more coverage.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say, but I do know for a fact that Kyle Busch Motorsports, and more specifically Toyota Racing, they had their own sponsor. So Safe Flight was a Toyota sponsor. Who else did they have on the side of that car? I'm drawing a blank on who else they had, but they had a few sponsors that were Toyota sponsors and filled up a good chunk of the season. So it's very possible that Charge Me and QuickTie, we haven't talked about QuickTie much, but both of those sponsors are sponsors that have been with Chandler throughout his racing career, and now that the opportunity was available to sponsor the car at the Xfinity level, it's very likely they just stepped up, to the plate to support their guy. So.
Yeah, apparently QuickTie is going to do multiple races for him down in the Xfinity Series too. I'd be curious to get a look at what his hauler says, if it's a Kaulig company's hauler as Allmendinger's was in Xfinity, or if it ends up being a Charge Me / QuickTie. I suspect it might end up being a Kaulig company's one, but we'll see. It'd be nice if one of the sponsors, like the fact that they're putting them in 5 Cup races, and it is QuickTie that is putting them in all 5 races, lets you know that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, especially when one of those races is Daytona 500.
Oh yeah, that's a couple $1 million right there just for the 500. So they're definitely stepping up to the plate for Chandler, and they're definitely going to be on the car, I think, multiple races at the Xfinity level as well. So I'm curious to see what the hauler looks like as well. I do think it'll probably be, in the end, probably a Kaulig design or a Kaulig swirl. But one thing that we've seen a lot of in years past is these sponsors getting a good block, maybe 2 or 3 blocks on the side of substantial size for both of those companies since they have stepped up. So but yeah, I'm curious to see how much sponsorship he's brought to the table, how much sponsorship Kaulig was able to bring to the team in and of itself outside of their own companies, and then also at the end of the day how much they end up self-sponsoring that car.
Yeah, my final prediction for this episode would be this in terms of the Xfinity Series. is the 10 car will go to victory lane 5 or more times this season. I do think Allmendinger is going to win 2 or 3 of those Xfinity races. I think Justin Haley will win a race, maybe more. But I do think one of their all-star drivers that they bring in, they'll get someone good in there at a track that they're really good at, and they'll connect and win. So I still think Kaulig Racing is very much going to be trophy hunting this year. We just might see some different names on the winner's plaque than the last couple have been.
Well, you know what? I'm good with that. I want to see a little diversity on the winners wall. Don't get me wrong. I'm an AJ guy through and through, but for the organization side of things, I really hope that we can start getting spreading the wealth a little bit on the winner's circle wall.
Absolutely. Well, if you're listening to this, this was recorded on Thursday, February the 2nd, released on February the 3rd, Friday morning. Enjoy it. Clash weekend is here. And apparently, according to Party Pooper News Ryan over there, the 500's not for a couple more weeks. So that was a bit of a letdown. Fucking football.
I apologize.
Oh, man. I'm excited, man. I know this was exclusively a Kaulig episode, but there's lots to be excited for. The organization has strengthened their relationship with their partners, have brought in more capital. Let's hope the on-track performance is there, and I'm excited to see what they do this weekend. I'm hoping both drivers are in the A. It would have been nice to see them put the 13 in the Clash too. That would have been fun.
Indeed, it would have. But yeah, as we saw last year, I mean, Haley was bad fast. He qualified third, won his heat race. So I have pretty high expectations that both cars should be running pretty competitively this weekend. And at the end of the day, this race doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's definitely a good barometer for where the program is for the rest of the year. So nervously excited about that. And it's first race of the season for, now the grind begins, 36 more. So really excited and can't wait to get going.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll be back after the Clash. We'll be doing something over the next 2 weeks with Cody and Mike over with the 4 Wide podcast, and then we also have our NASCAR fantasy draft that we're doing, which we'll definitely do some stuff related to that on this show. But Ryan, what else you got going on, man?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to, take the opportunity for everybody watching this that, we do have a new Facebook page, very active page called Kaulig Nation. If you're not a member yet, please come on over. We're going to be covering a lot of all Kaulig related, news, results, highlights, the whole nine. So come over and hang out with us over there. We're really looking forward to creating quite a good community, and everyone's support is always appreciated. So come on, join us there, Kaulig Nation, for this year. It's going to be an exciting ride.
Awesome. Sounds like a blast, man. Can't wait to dive into all that. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Trophy Hunter Pod. We're going to have all sorts of things that we're going to set up for you this year, and maybe even some live watch-alongs. We'll see if we can cue that up. The problem is it's hard for the two of us to have the exact same feed going at the exact same time.
Yeah. Well, I will say this.
God,
I'm super excited. Well, to tell you what, NASCAR is doing a really cool thing. They're keeping the in-car videos this year for all cars. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's going to be pretty cool. We could probably stream that. And the scanners are free this year. So, scanners are free on the PC. So something we can definitely dial into, hopefully.
Wait, is it just free on the PC?
Yes, free for PC. You have to pay for it on the app.
Ah, son of a bitch. All righty. Well, damn it. Party pooper times 2, man. Anyways.
Just spitting facts, so I can't help it. It is what it is.
Let's put a smile on those faces, people. It's race weekend. Let's get it. It's trophy hunting time. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, everyone.